Today I'm going to show you how to make my version of a tteokbokki. It's as fun to make as it is to try and pronounce. I'm definitely not going to make it the traditional version. I'm going to put my little twists to it. If you don't know what tteokbokki is, it's basically Korean rice cakes, usually mixed with fish cakes, and then that's tossed in like a sweet, spicy sauce. But you can't really make it if you don't have good quality rice flour. So I'm first gonna show you how to make the rice flour from scratch using rice grains. And then I'm gonna show you my version of a tteokbokki. Let's go. Before we begin, I wanna show you this brand new Fitbit Versa 3. It's so sleek and beautiful. I love that there's no kind of like protruding buttons on it. I've been a huge fan of Fitbit smartwatches for a long time. They're just the perfect tool to kind of make your life easier. All I have to do now is basically charge the watch and then pair it with the Fitbit app on my phone, and then we're basically good to go. One of my favorite new features is that Alexa is actually built into the Versa 3. And as you're gonna see, that's gonna come really handy in this particular recipe because there's a lot of kind of like waiting involved. So at least this makes it funner. Let's get cooking. The first thing you want for really good rice flour is you want really good rice. So I usually recommend using short to medium grain rice. I'm using some beautiful sushi rice today. And what we're gonna do is just really rinse it a couple times. So you're gonna wash it maybe 10 times in some water until your water starts kind of running a little clear. It might be murky here and there, but that's no biggie. But you just wanna try to remove as much starch as possible. Next thing we're gonna do is leave the rice in some water, and then that's gonna go in the fridge for at least 12 hours. The longer we leave the rice soaking in the water, the chewier we're gonna get in terms of the texture of the rice cakes. Now that we're all set, the last thing you wanna do is forget about your rice. So let's set a reminder. Set reminder to strain the rice at 10:30 a.m. All right, good morning. It looks like it's about time to strain. This recipe is actually really easy to put together. Making these rice cakes, or the garetok, is the trickiest part. I honestly never make rice cakes from scratch. I'd rather buy them already made, so I'm definitely not an expert. I just wanted to show you that it's possible. Once the rice grains are properly dried, after an hour or two, place them in a food processor for about 5 minutes. It'll break down really easily at first, but you want to keep going until you get a very fine flour-like texture. Mix your 2 cups of rice flour with 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and half a teaspoon of salt. Mix all that together and then add in about a half a cup of boiling water. When mixed, cover with cling wrap, but leave a hole for steam to come out. This will go into the microwave on high for about 2 minutes. Take it out and then adjust it with a little bit more water if needed, or just mix it along. So this really depends on the absorption rate of your rice flour. The texture you're looking for is something like a dry dough. You don't want something too sticky, too wet. If it starts looking like a pancake batter, you've gone too far with the water. I ended up using about 3/4 cups of water. And this is kind of like the right consistency you want to go for. Something chunky, but something that also sticks together as you press it down. Ultimately, after cooking, this is what it should look for. Kind of loose, but you should be able to form it with your hands. Now remember, this is piping hot. So if you're not used to dealing with hot things, you might want to put some gloves on, some cloth gloves on, to help you kind of shape this dough around. Before shaping this, you want to add a little bit of sesame oil on your board. It'll just make sure that nothing sticks, but at the same time, it'll just season your rice cakes slightly. Now you basically have to pound this with whatever you have available just until the dough really starts to come together into one cohesive ball. The more you pound this, the chewier it'll get. When you have something that looks like this, we can start rolling it out. Just look at how bouncy this is. Start by making it into a large cylinder, then cutting it into smaller pieces, and then rolling those out. I've seen these very thick as I've seen them very thin. Ultimately, you decide since you're the one eating it. For our sauce, just mince some garlic and slice some onions. Mix the garlic with sugar, gochujang, soy sauce, and gochugaru. Bring some broth to simmer in a shallow pan. You can use a traditional kelp and anchovy stock for something more traditional, or as a substitute, honestly, just use any broth that you enjoy eating. Add in your sauce, incorporate this well, and then toss in your onions, followed by your rice cakes and fish cakes if you're using them. Simmer that until it gets really nice and thick, so the sugar is gonna help really thicken that mix together, and then also some of the residual starch you have on the rice cakes. I'm gonna finish mine with some furikake, some crunchy onions, and some spring onions. I was really excited while making this, and now I'm even more excited to try it. Like I mentioned, this is not a traditional recipe at all. Instead of some sesame seeds, I used some furikake with some seaweed in there. I put some spring onions in there, which is usually quite traditional. I omitted the fish cakes. Let's give it a try. This should be like really nice and chewy, and it should be perfectly coated with sauce, which it is. So the sauce, you really want it to be nice and thick. This is so good. What I love about these rice cakes is that they're so versatile. You can actually use them in so many different ways. Like think of mac and cheese. You could just use rice cakes if you want. That could really work. Kind of think of it like pasta and add any type of sauce you want. But this kind of quote unquote slightly more traditional way in terms of the sweet spicy sauce will always be a winner in my book. Thanks for watching, guys.